I found out something very unsettling about Harry. He gambles.
What do you mean he gambles?
He plays craps in the back room of a private club. I mean, you know, yo 11, come on, little Joe. Snake eyes, hard way 8s. That's how it goes. He loses a lot of money.
You had no idea?
No, I didn't.
Welcome to the Crap Vegas podcast.
Vegas, here we come.
Vegas!
Here are your hosts, Chris and Josh.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crap Vegas podcast. I'm Chris, he's Josh, and Josh, here we are again, less than a week apart from the previous episode.
I think something's wrong with us.
I don't know what's going on, but it's really exciting.
Don't get your hopes up, anybody that's listening, though. This is going to be a one-time quick turn.
This will never happen again. But you know what? We both said we either wanted to be back in Vegas right now or we want to record another podcast. So here we are. It's a little after 9 o'clock Eastern my time, and we're recording the next episode.
Exactly. So thanks for listening in advance.
Yeah, absolutely. So like always, you can reach us on our email, podcast@crapvegas.com. We have that new text voicemail line, 702-978-7775. Or we're always reachable on Twitter. He's at Vegas Duffy. I'm at Small Whale 13. So last time, Josh, when we left off, we were talking about our trip to Vegas, and I think we finished up with Sunday night. So why don't we pick up with Monday morning and get running from there?
Well, I think that sounds good. If I remember right, the tables at Wynn were 200 and 500, and this is a Monday morning, and I don't know that I've ever seen the two tables going that were that high a limit. So the first thing we did was wandered over to Encore, and lo and behold, did find a $25 table, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, and I have no idea why those limits were as high as they were. I still don't understand it. I assume that they were two big players that they had bumped it up for, and we weren't going to try to fight it to push the limits down. The Encore.
Yeah, I think if we had found something, if we hadn't found something at Encore, we might have gone back and tried to ask, but fortunately we didn't have to. Well, unfortunately, as it turned out, but
yeah,
but
yes,
we were able to find a table at Encore with a box that I knew, as you know, I remembered as being a good box person, and the crew we didn't know very well, but I did recognize the box. Of course, I got his name wrong, but
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was absolutely terrible, if I remember correctly. Is that how your memory serves you?
Oh yeah, it was so terrible, Chris, and this ties into our last episode of playing the don't on our craps crawl.
Oh,
it was so terrible that Chris usually stands next to me at the table. We usually shoot side by side and or play side by side, and oftentimes he stands on my right. But it was so bad that he decided to go to the other end of the table, and that didn't help. I think it was just the two of us at that point. And so he decided to do what?
I will preface this by saying, I don't think I've ever seen you mad at me before, but that might have been the first time. I said, Josh, I'm going to play the don't at a real table for real money with nobody else around.
So then
Josh looked pissed.
Well, I was just pissed because I didn't really want to play the don't, and I didn't want to play against you because if I lost and you won, I'd be really pissed. Yeah. And if we both lost, it would, so I think that I ended up playing the don't with you, right? I don't think I played against you. Yeah.
But what ended up happening, and we'd had, 15 bad rolls in a row before this. We didn't start this way. No. So when I switched down there, so I put my don't pass line bet out there. And what happens immediately afterwards, I hit a point. The first point we had seen in forever.
Well,
so we're just laughing at each other.
We got a couple don't come bets up.
We did.
And then you made I
made the point. So we're like, okay,
we switched.
Yeah, we had to switch over because we couldn't keep doing this. It was a one-time thing to kind of switch the luck around. And then I proceeded, I think, to hit like 3 or 4 more points. Well, it actually got significantly better.
But the dealers were having fun, and they said you hit 4, but it was really only 2 because the first 2 canceled each other out.
Yes, that's true. But in my mind, I was just an amazing shooter and hit 4. You can't hold me back. I am so good.
So there is a point that I wanted to make, or an observation that I wanted to make. So I don't know if you remember this. Chris was at the other side of the table, but I had a come bet, a $25 don't come bet. Sorry, I'm not used to the terminology. And when Chris made the point, which wasn't where my come bet ended up, it ended up on a 5. Anyway, long story short, I had a $25 don't come bet out there as we were again both shooting from the pass line. And I had my regular, 270 across at this point, but I still had a $25 don't come bet up on the 5. And the dealers asked me, do I want to take it down? And for anyone that knows craps odds, once you get past that, if you're playing on the don't, once you get past the initial come out roll, the odds are in your favor. So absolutely not did I want to take that $25 down, even though I also had, I think, a $50 place bet on the 5. So I was working against myself, but I wasn't going to take the don't bet down because it was already in my favor.
Did you take the odds? Did you take the odds down that you laid?
Yeah, I did not have any odds on it. It was just
okay. I pulled the whole bet down.
Yeah,
I do remember. I wasn't going to do that. You kept yours up. I took mine down. I was like, okay, I was in. I'm out now.
And I think, as I remember, I think you ended up rolling the 5, so I lost that $25. I think
you did, and I laughed at you because I said I told you to take it down, and you wouldn't listen.
Anyway, so it was but then so Chris made those 4 points. And I think we stopped at that point, didn't we? I think we cleared up pretty quickly after that.
We weren't having a very good time, if I remember correctly. I could tell you were still mad at me from even trying that move in the first place. We had a couple other people at the table that we didn't particularly like playing with.
Oh, the don't lady that we talked about the last episode.
that followed us around from table to table. Yeah, and she was kind of rubbing me the wrong way. So no, we just got up and shifted back over to Wynn, which was probably a bad idea because it continued to be bad for a little bit.
But we did get, I think we got at least part of our buy-in back at Encore with your good roll. So we left, not down as much as we had been. So that was at least something.
And then I think we were going to take an early lunch. But before then, Josh and I both had like a shopping credit at the Wynn Plaza Shops as part of a promotion that we had. And Josh will tell you, I'm not a fancy clothes sort of person. And we weren't exactly sure how to spend this money. But it turns out it's much harder to spend that money than you would imagine because even $500 at those shops does not go very far, does it, Josh?
No, it sure doesn't. That was what we had was we each had a $500 gift card to the shops at Wynn Plaza or the whatever they call the shopping promenade that goes between Wynn and Encore. And I had never been to Wynn Plaza before, and Chris, I don't think you had either.
No, I didn't. First, we had to figure out restaurants and room service there. Yeah.
So first we had to figure out where it was, and then we went over to try and spend our $500 gift cards. And neither of us, and Chris isn't, and I'm not either, are closed horses, and
no.
We were like, okay, we don't want to spend over $500, but what are we going to spend this $500 on?
And you went to a store and were unsuccessful the first time, if I remember correctly.
Well, I had an idea. I'm like, okay, I wear ties at work sometimes, so I can spend $500, and I think the ties at Hermes, is that how you say it? Something like that. Yeah. Are about $250 each. So I thought to myself, I could get 2 ties. So I go in there, I pick out 2 beautiful ties. They're about $250, $260, and I pull out the gift card for the guy, and he says, "We don't take." The Wynn gift cards.
That is so embarrassing.
Yes. So off I go to find Chris, and he's not where I thought he was going to be, but I saw him in this store called Kitten. Is that right?
For my own personal sake, I'm going to pray to God it's not Kitten, and I'm going to hope it's like Kiten or Keaton or something much more exotic than that.
I think it's Kitten. I'm going with Kitten.
Okay, yeah, Kitten. That's what it is, Josh.
Anyway, it's obviously a clothing store, and I go in and Chris is looking at things, and I don't remember if you brought up ties or I brought up ties. But anyway, they had ties in this store as well.
They did.
Okay, so problem solved. Except, and Chris, I think by this point you were looking at ties as well because the $1,300 T-shirt was a little more than we wanted to spend.
Yes.
The dress shirt, I think I saw a dress shirt that started at $600 and some.
Yeah, the ones I saw were well over $1,000. And honestly, Josh, I had no desire for a tie. I'll probably never wear it. But when I walked into the store, I was kind of committed at that point. And I was like, oh, I'm kind of interested in a belt. And he pointed me in the direction. And as soon as he asked me if I had a price range, that was a bad sign. And the cheapest belt that they had was $900. And I was like, oh, shit.
So anyway, they had some ties. And these ties were $330 a piece.
Oh, what a steal. Yeah.
So most expensive tie I've ever had. So I said I would get one tie and I would give Chris the remainder of my gift card. So you ended up getting 2 ties. So
I did. And I'm actually
$1,000 worth of tie.
I'm going to gift back that second tie to you for Christmas this year. So now you know in advance.
Look at it that carefully. I need to know if I like
it. So it was an experience. Yeah.
Funny story is we were at the cage later on that day at Wynn. The woman who had helped us giving us the gift cards was there that I happened to run into. She remembered me and she said, "Where did you end up going?" And I said, "I don't know, some store with a K." And she just cracked up saying that was such a man answer.
It is. Yes.
Anyway, we
shop at Costco, man. I don't care what they have,
with a K.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, we ended up, it was nice of Wynn to do that. And we
absolutely
appreciated that. And even though we're not big
I have
shoppers
2 fancy ties
level.
in my wardrobe now.
Right. Anyway, so then what do we do after that, Chris?
So Crapless, I think after lunch is where we went to after a relatively poor session at the regular table that wasn't worth discussing. But I think that Crapless was something that we did want to spend a little bit more time on at this point.
Yeah, and one thing before we jump into that, while we were playing at the regular table, we didn't have a lot of luck, and we saw a crew over at the Crapless table that we like a lot. It's a crew of three female dealers and 1 male dealer, and we liked them a lot. And as we were, I don't even think Chris saw this, but as we were playing, one of them glanced over at me, and they recognized us and said hello, and I kind of pointed and motioned to how much is the table, and she said it's 50, and then she gave me some kind of motions that they would lower it for us. And she's holding up Chris is holding up, $25 fingers. And that's exactly what she did. And I'm like, okay, great. So we colored up at the regular table pretty quickly and scrambled on over to Crapless. And I think, and Chris, you tell me if I'm wrong, at least from some of the folks that we have that follow us on Twitter that we interact with, I think Crapless brings out almost the same visceral reaction in people as playing the don't does.
It does. I don't understand it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't play every time at the casino at a Crapless table. And yes, I understand how some people can equivocate it to 6 to 5 blackjack, but it does have a place and it can be really entertaining in small doses.
And I think what I think is important is I'm with everybody else that I don't want to see Crapless replace regular Craps. No, I don't either. And I don't want to see it replace everything except, Roll to Win or anything like that. Yeah. So, we're fortunate enough that we usually can find a regular table at limits we can play at in addition to occasionally a Crapless table. But so I think it's important to say, we are not at all in favor of Crapless replacing regular Craps.
No, definitely not.
I really hope that doesn't happen. But I think, as Chris said, I think it can be a really neat change of pace. And I think as long as what you're doing doesn't sound right, but as long as you know the odds of the various bets and really where the disadvantages to Crapless are, then you can enjoy it, especially if you play like we do, which is really placing numbers. In Crapless, you're placing the extra numbers, the 2, 3, 11, and 12, but the payouts are still, you're getting the correct odds on your place bets when you're buying them. Yeah. And so it's actually a fine, from that point of view, if you look at Wizard of Odds, if you're buying the 2, 3, 11, 12, the odds are I think it's pretty close to less than 1% in the house's favor.
I mean, you can avoid the worst part of the game.
It's not bad. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I was going to say, you can avoid the worst part of the game. You don't have to play on the pass line. I mean, theoretically, somebody's got to shoot. So, one of us would have to be on there. Right. But, if you can avoid the pass line, if there's more than you on the table, then the game's fine at that point.
Right. You can place the numbers you want to, but if you don't want to play the outside, you don't have to.
Don't play.
Now, it is a significant disadvantage on the pass line and for come
betting. Yeah.
Right. But if you're just placing numbers, there's really not no reason not to do it from that standpoint, in my opinion.
No, I agree. And I was talking to you a little bit earlier tonight when I got off work today. I actually headed up to my local casino. That's about an hour from where I live and work. And unfortunately for me, it's almost all Crapless tables. They only have 3 tables in the whole casino. 2 of them are crapless, one of them's traditional. But that traditional table only really opens up on Friday and Saturday night at like 8:30.
Right.
So usually, it's just the crapless table. And even worse than that, Josh, half the time it's half of a crapless table. They put a wall up on the other half because they don't have enough dealers to open the other half of the table.
They put they put a wall up?
Yeah, it's like a little, it's hard to explain. If you saw it, you would understand, but it's a wall that they put along the drink rail on one half of the table so that you couldn't like try to put your chips there and stuff.
Oh, interesting.
So it almost creates a bigger background for you to throw again. So throwing it would actually it'd be really good for you, Josh. It's like the bumpers on a bowling alley. It makes it harder to throw the dice off.
Speaking of, I think it was at that crap session that I threw both the dice off the table on the fly on that crap.
You did
session.
Yeah,
yes.
I think you almost killed Swan when doing it too.
So we have a joke that I need a guardrail that goes up at the end of a table, or like bumpers on it.
You need all the help you can get.
Anyway, so go back to your session, Chris. Tonight you had a good.
No, but I mean, do I want to play that? No, I'd much rather play at a traditional table, but it's what's available to me. The crews of that local property are absolutely terrific. So I had a terrific time. It was actually a really good session. I was shooting tonight and had one of the better rolls I've had recently. I'm not a big hardway bettor. I'm sure Josh would tell you that. But I happened to put a quarter on the point. It was a 10 with a piggyback for the dealers for a nickel. It hit on the point, which was great. Parlayed it to 100. Put the dealers to 10. It hit again, parlayed it to 200, got the dealers to a quarter, hit again. So next thing you know, I've made a few grand off of this hardway that I really don't usually play, but it's amazing how much that can change a session for you. And more importantly, what I was telling Josh, because the property is so small, they typically only have 12 to 15 dealers working in any given shift. So for them to drop, $1,000 in tips, I mean, that has a significant impact on their take-home pay at the end of the day. So they're very appreciative. They're very thankful. It makes for a great session for everybody.
That's terrific. I'm glad you had a good run.
Yeah,
and do you know at your local place, do they pool their tips, or does that crap shift get to keep theirs, or how do they do it?
No, they pool it. But one thing that you would like, Josh, we still have the traditional all tall small payouts. So we are still 35 to 1 and 175 to 1.
That's
and
cool.
It's bonus craps too. So if you hit a small or a tall, you can press it and keep up on it and keep going while the points go.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
that's
so
very cool.
It is a lot of fun. And on a crapless game, yeah, I mean, you're hitting those extreme numbers. Not only are they helping you for the all tall small, but you're also getting paid on them, which is, pretty nice too.
That's very cool. Anyway, so back to our crapless session in Vegas. We had just an amazing run, didn't we?
We did. It was really good.
So one thing, the way we play Crapless, and I think Chris and I pretty much do the same thing, is if we're playing all the numbers. So we do have a pass line bet with odds. And one of the nice things about Crapless, at least in Vegas, in my opinion, at Wynn particularly, because it's where we played it, but is it's just 2 times odds on the 2, 3, 11, 12. Which is nice because again, it's the pass line is actually the least advantageous bet. Not that any are, but the least advantageous bet of as opposed to placing the numbers. So it's nice that on those outside you can only go 2 times anyway, so you're not going too crazy. But we had a great roll. But what I was going to say is, if we're playing, what are we playing? 3-9. You have to help me here. 3.
Yeah, every roll, Josh would say, hey, how much money do I put out here this time? So typically we're paying $370. So we're putting a quarter on the extremes, 2, 3, 11, 12, and then a 50 base bet on the traditional numbers.
This is why I need my accountant with me at all times.
Exactly.
Seriously, I will ask the dealers or Chris, how much do I need to put out?
Yeah, I would even scream across the table to you when we were on opposite sides that one time.
Yes, that's true. Sometimes I'll just put 400 out because then they'll
they'll figure it out,
give me the right amount. But anyway, at Crapless, when you're laying out that much money to start, a couple quick 7s can really, really be painful. That's the downside. That's one of the big downsides about jumping out with that big spread.
Yeah, for sure. And at my local place, it's actually 10 times odds on all numbers. So, and you know me, I have to take full odds. So even tonight, if I got, if I'm playing a quarter on the line here, I'm putting 250 on a 2 or a 12 and praying to God it hits,
So, Crapless can be a lot of fun. And we had in our session in Vegas, we had the 2 or the 12, I can't remember which. I think, Chris, up to 300. We had just some, and that pays the 2 and the 12 pay 6 to 1. So if you can get those place bets, those buy bets up, in that range, that's just, you're making a lot of money quickly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's effectively really a hard way bet at that point is what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, you're paying 6 to 1. It's amazing.
So that was a lot of fun. And we played a couple more crapless sessions, I think, but that was the one that really, we had another decent one, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think we might have had one more, but yeah, it wasn't more memorable than anything else that we did while we were there.
And this was the beginning of, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. It happened after Chris left, but the beginning of Danny, who is Vegas introvert on Twitter, had arrived at Wynn and was kind of watching us play Crapless in the background and just hanging out against the wall. And I think he got there and his room wasn't ready yet. And he had asked if he could store his bags in my room. And I said he could. But he was just waiting for us to finish the session. As it turned out, his room was ready by the time by the time we were done. But, so he had gone to check into his room because he got a text that his room was ready. He went to go check in and he asked me, could you keep an eye on my bags? And so Chris and I had this great run in Crapless, sorry. And we were all excited and pumped and ready to color up. And so color up and off we go. And I get a text from Danny 15, 20 minutes later. Hey, you just left my bags at the table.
I think we were at the kitten store at that point.
Yeah, I think you're right too. And I said, oh shit.
Whoops.
Fortunately, nothing happened and I think all was forgiven. But that was the beginning of Danny's 3 visits to keep an eye on me at the craps table. And every single time I ended up winning. So Danny is the new good luck charm I've decided at craps, Vegas introvert.
Oh, so you got a lucky charm in the focus of a person there.
Exactly.
Jeez.
But I felt terrible about leaving his bags.
Well, so I left Tuesday morning, first thing, like 4 a.m. And I know you got to have a session with one of my favorite dealers that morning. And you keep telling me that you hit the all tall small twice, and I still don't believe it. And I've already informed all of our followers that it's a lie. That's right. But why don't you go ahead and share that lie with everybody so that they can hear it some more?
Well, it was first of all, Rick is one of our favorite dealers at Wynn, and I can't remember who the rest of the crew was, but it was a good crew, and was playing with Rick and the gang, and hit the all tall small first thing, really right away that morning, and texted Chris, who I think was on the airplane.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
I said, "You're not going to believe what happened," and then of course he didn't believe me. But then Danny showed up, Vegas introvert showed up. Uh-huh. And watched as I hit the second one. So I had a witness for the second one. So I hit 2 of them that morning in that morning session.
Everybody has a price, Josh.
That's right. I don't remember how the session was good. I don't think it was knock your socks off good. It wasn't as good as the session we had, I think, on Sunday night. Okay. But it was a really nice session. And so that made, I think, 5 times total on the trip that I hit.
It's pretty insane because I can count on one hand the amount of times we've hit the all tall small playing together, and we play a lot of craps together. So to have 5 in one trip is pretty darn amazing.
Yeah, it was super cool. So that was my morning, and unfortunately, and this went to our rule from the last podcast. Unfortunately,
never leave the table.
I went up and had lunch or whatever I did, and came back down for an afternoon session. And I was really trying, and this is what you should not do. Anybody listening and wanting to learn, wanting to do this. I was playing specifically to try and make it to black, to win black status. I knew I only needed however many tier credits to do it. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to play an afternoon session. It was a good morning. I can get the 2,000 tier credits I need or whatever it was, get to black and be done for the trip. And what do? I lost, a lot. My first marker buy-in 10 minutes, which was obviously not enough to get me the tier credits that I needed to get to black. So what I did, went in another marker. Same thing happened. Another marker. Same thing happened. So here I was down a lot in 45 minutes or so, having accumulated almost nothing in tier credits. So I switched tables, did another marker, then did another marker.
You show him, Josh. You keep chasing him. You'll get there.
And fortunately, and then Danny came again.
Oh,
so
here we
Danny
go.
came after
Rabbit's foot's there.
Seriously, came after I was in that fifth marker, fourth marker, whatever it was, and things started to turn. And I made back the 2 markers that I bought in at that second, at the second table, and then a little bit from the first. So, long story short, still finished down on the trip. Due to that day, I would have been even or barely ahead if not for that afternoon session. So that goes to our rule. If you're even or ahead on the last day at any point, stop. But if you're down, chase.
Well, in the future, I would recommend that you just go play Heidi's instead, because you can limit your losses a little bit more there. And 2, I don't think half the things that you said happened that morning actually even happened. So I'm just going to assume you just lost an ass ton, and you're not telling me.
That's right. Well, I did do that, but I did tell you. But
okay,
it was all worth it though, because I did make it to Wynn Black status again. So,
and Steve Wynn came out on the floor himself, shook your hand, handed you your new card.
Let's just say they'll be happy with me for the way I decided to chase that status.
For sure. Well, is there anything else from the trip that you wanted to touch on?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. We just wanted to kind of wrap up these last 2 days. They're mostly gambling heavy. As Chris said, hitting the all tall small 5 times on the trip was really cool. It's super nice when it hits, especially if you've got a good session already going. And it can save you in a bad session. Not that we're recommending it. We know it's a bad bet, but it's fun to play. And when it does hit, it's fun. And it hits, enough that it's, it's not unheard of.
One all covers your bets for a significant period of time.
Right.
5 alls. I mean, yeah, your whole trip's easily covered from that perspective. And heck, I look back and say, gosh, if we didn't hit a couple of those when I was there, what would my losses look like for that period?
That's right. Oh, I know one thing, Chris, I wanted to mention back to our I can't say crapless session. We talked a little bit about tipping, and you talked about your session tonight at your local casino and tipping on the hard ways. So when Chris and I tip, we're going to do a segment of one of our shows specifically on tipping. But when Chris and I tip, we tip usually by making place bets often. And the better a roll is going, the more place bets we're going to have out on numbers. And so in this crapless session, we had every number covered for the dealers. So they were really enjoying, this great roll and every number that comes. And what they do now at Wynn, and I think a lot of properties, they don't keep the bets up when they hit. They have to take them down. It used to be they could leave them up and press them if they wanted to and things like that. But now they take them down. So Chris and I were putting up. He had half the table and I had half the table, and we were responsible for keeping those tips up there. And it was a lot of fun. I think the dealers obviously really enjoy that too, and we do too. I mean, we're getting all this money, and it's nice to give some back. I just wanted to mention that. So that was not only did we have all the numbers placed, we ended up with all the numbers placed for the dealers too.
No, it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And I guess I didn't realize it before, or maybe it's different at local casinos for me, but at least Wynn said they don't take any VIG on buy bets for dealers. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's right. I'd forgotten that.
At home, I know it's not actually that way. If it raises you to a new VIG level, they can either pay it as a place bet or you can pay the VIG for them. But there, if you're putting, dealers just on the line behind the point as an extra, as an extra purchase, they didn't have to take the VIG, which was really nice.
Right. And that's super cool.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we have 1 or 2 questions we wanted to get to real quick. We're trying to keep this episode a little bit shorter since it's kind of outside of our normal rotation. But we did get a voicemail from Joyce, and I'm going to apologize in advance because this is our first voicemail call that we're trying to play, and I had to kind of finagle it to get it into the system correctly, and it may be a little bit soft, but hopefully everybody can hear it. But here's our call from Joyce.
Hi, it's Joyce, JSMH 7795. I've enjoyed listening to your podcast at crapvegas.com. I've got a question for you both. My question's in regard to tracking win and losses while playing in Las Vegas. And when do players report win and losses when they're playing to the IRS? I'm wondering at what amount are winnings subject to taxes after playing? And what records or documentations should we be keeping as players when we're playing slots and table games? I know it's a lot easier for us that play slots. We can access our play daily with our player's card. But what do players do that are playing the table games? Do you keep a journal? Do you track this daily? And it would be very helpful to hear how you do it and what's best. I appreciate it. I enjoy listening to your podcast and look forward to the next one. Thanks, guys.
Well, Joyce, thank you for the message. We do appreciate it. And it was great hearing your voice and great meeting you in Vegas last trip when we were out there, you and your husband.
Yeah, we met Joyce and her husband. And sorry, Chris. And she's just a wonderful person. I'd met her for like 20 seconds on one previous trip. I knew she was going to be there. And I think I was at the craps table, or maybe I was at the cage. And I saw this woman kind of looking at me. And I said, "Are you Joyce?" So it was nice to actually see her for more than a 10-second span. And she and her husband are really nice. And yes, thank you for being our first voicemail that we've played on the show.
We're on the board. Watch out, people. So, Josh, I'll let you answer this first because I'm going to answer this more from a professional standpoint since this is kind of what I do. But what do you do for your wins and losses for tracking?
I'm raising my eyebrows as Chris said he was going to have me answer this first. I was going to pass this on to my accountant.
Okay, so do you record your wins and losses?
So officially, yes, I keep a journal of each session as required by the IRS.
Sounds like a deposition right now.
In order to defer any winnings that I have or offset them against my losses. But truthfully, I don't think I finished ahead on many years in the aggregate that I've had to worry about. I've only, as I mentioned on our last show, I've only had, I recounted, I've had 4 hand pays that have, where I've had W2Gs issued. And all of them were more than offset by table games losses. Not to say there may have been some years where I finished ahead. Obviously there's trips and sessions and things like that. But in those particular instances, they were not winning years. So I didn't have to, the winnings were offset by losses. But Chris, you can speak to the specifics of what's required much better than I can, I think. I hope.
Permission to treat the witness as hostile right now.
That's right.
So here's my default answer for everybody that asks this question. I think the safest thing that everybody can do and that you should do is you should keep an Excel spreadsheet. You can do it on a paper ledger if you want to, but Excel's easiest. Just keep a ledger with one line for each day that you play, record the property that you played at, the amount of cash that you put in, so whatever you took with you and actually used, and the amount of cash that you came out with. And I usually add an extra tab in there, an extra column for any W2Gs that were issued while you're there. For a couple reasons. A, they're kind of a little bit special since you're going to be reporting them separately on your taxes at the end of the year. And B, because you need to remember that you had a W2G so that at the end of the year you can actually remember to claim them and don't miss them. Because the last thing in the world you want to do is trigger a refile or even potentially an audit because you left off income because this is not an area you want to be fighting in. So I would make a spreadsheet that has that information first. That's the beginning of it. Josh, you raised your hand.
Didn't want to interrupt you. That's the signal. We're trying not to talk over each other.
You're good. I appreciate that. Yeah. Yes, sir.
For my accountant. No, as you were saying that, it reminded me the very first hand pay I had, I actually did have that happen. I didn't file anything on my taxes. Yes. Kind of just forgot that I had it. I think it was $2,500. It was a Superman machine at Bellagio. I remember that very first hand pay I ever had. But anyway, I got, a year or 2 years later,
yes,
a notice of unreported income or, something like that from the IRS saying, I owed whatever it was I owed in taxes based on that, $2,500 or whatever it was. So I had to pay it. There was no, at that point I wasn't going to fight. I just paid the full, even though I'm sure it was a losing year and so on. I just paid whatever it was, $400.
But interest and penalties and all the fun stuff. Yeah.
So it is, they will catch you. And I
always tell people it takes time. It typically takes a couple for any missed income. Forget gambling. It could take 4 years for them to actually notice that you forgot to file something. But they eventually will come back to it. Now, sometimes you'll get lucky. You'll go to file your 1040 for the year and it will kick it back if you try to e-file it and say it doesn't match up with the income that they have on file. That's if you're lucky. You hope for that to happen because that's much easier to fix. But yes, it could come back a couple years later, and then you're getting hit with an underpayment penalty and interest for that whole period. It's a hassle. So try to make notes to yourself for any time you had a W-2G, because that's the one thing you got to make sure that you file for, even if you have losses to offset it.
And you, Chris, brought up I think you mentioned on the last show too, a great idea, which is as soon as you get that W2G, if you're at a slot machine, take a picture of it. So if you lose the paper copy, you have a picture on your phone of that.
Yes.
And I will say, Chris, and you might have something to add here, but I was told, and tell me if I'm wrong, but for folks wondering, how to keep track of this, the sessions, I know some properties, MGM, you can log on and they'll tell you how much you won or lost a particular property. That is not sufficient for IRS purposes.
It's not.
It's my understanding.
Use those, and if you get audited and try to use that, they're not going to go for it. That's not an official ledger. They even put, if you ever look at the bottom of those, reported wins, loss reports, whatever they call it, there's always a statement that says something along the lines, this cannot be used for tax purposes. This is information only. If you have a ledger, whether it's accurate or not, it looks like you're trying. And that is information you can stand behind and use. They can't argue with you on a day-by-day basis of how much cash you took to a casino and how much you pulled out. If you just try to use the casino's reports, they're going to say those are historically unreliable and this is not a true ledger of what happened. So just set yourself up for success and try to get something down. Even if you miss a day here or there, or you miss a session or whatever it is, that's better than nothing and at least gives you a leg to stand on if anything ever pops up.
And Chris, remind me if I'm wrong, but basically your gambling wins can be offset by your gambling losses. You can't deduct your losses, but you can offset your wins by your losses.
Correct. Yeah,
right?
You can never deduct losses that exceed your actual gains for the year from gambling, but you can offset them down to zero. So I always tell people, if you have a W2G for any reason, whether it's a slot win or a table win that happens to issue one, do not have taxes withheld. There's no reason to. For the average gambler, you're going to have far more losses than you ever have in wins. So there's no reason to pay the government in advance for this stuff just to get it back at the end of the year. Don't worry about federal tax being withheld. I mean, Nevada has no state tax, so you don't have to worry about it there. But in certain states, like where I live, they will try to withhold state tax on you, which you may want to do. That's a different story. But talking about W2G, so let's run through real quick why you would ever get a W2G, because I think Joyce asked about that. So a slot win over $1,200. And keep in mind, this includes the amount that you originally wagered. So if you're playing on a $100 slot machine and you hit something that pays 15 credits, well, that's going to kick out a W2G because you won $1,500, even if you wagered 100. Even if it paid 12 credits and paid $1,200, you're still going to get one because that original wager is included in the payback, so it's going to be factored in. It sucks, but it's just the way it is, and we've been all hoping that number was going to change for a long time.
I know. I keep hearing rumors that it's going to go up. But
there's a lot of talk it's going to go to 5,000 soon, but we're still not there. Keno jackpots of $1,500 or more for the 4 people in America that applies to. It's good to know. And then beyond that, I mean, there's $5,000 in a poker tournament or more. That would apply for some people. And then the last one is the table games one. This seems to confuse people the most. So you can get a W2G at a table game for any win that exceeds $600. However, it's got to be at least 300 times your wager to get to that point. So the only time I think for most players this pops up is on side bets, and specifically for a craps player, it's on the fire bet. If you hit that 6-point fire bet that pays 1,000 to 1, then yes, you're going to get a W2G issued when they pay it out.
Would be a good problem to have on the fire bet, but
I've never had it before.
I've
seen people had it. And Joyce's final question, she asks, when is gambling income taxable? Well, the answer is always. All gambling earnings, whether you get a W2G or it's just money that you won in a slot machine, that is technically all taxable wages or earnings in this case. But that can, like we said earlier, that can all be offset by gambling losses. So as long as you keep your log at the end of the year, it should net out to effectively zero, because it would truly probably be a negative number for most people. So you shouldn't have to pay any taxes on your gambling for the year, unless you're a professional gambler that somehow manages to walk away with a profit, or if you happen to have a lucky year like I had last year.
And the lawyer inside me, Chris, is saying, please don't take any of what we're saying as constituting advice from your tax professional or attorney. Please
Correct.
Check with your tax professional before.
Yeah. This is not tax advice. I do not represent you. And if anybody asks, I didn't tell you anything. And I am not a practicing tax accountant. I am on the opposite side in private accounting. So I don't even know what you're talking about.
That's right. I just had to throw that out there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But I trust you as my accountant.
Okay. The only other question I want to address this week, Josh, before we get out of here, we got an email from Tim Ruiz, who's Tim_Ruiz on Twitter. He said, my play is almost all at MGM resort properties. Trying to get the attention of a host, do you recommend play at one property of the MGM line as compared to spreading my play out throughout multiple MGM properties? Would that make much of a difference? I know the level of my play weighs in on the type of casino, i.e. Luxor versus Bellagio, etc. Thanks so much.
Well, my understanding from my host at Bellagio last time we spoke is that MGM has changed its policies so that they no longer, much like Caesars has done for a while, they no longer are concerned with whether or not you play at your hosted property or other MGM properties. This is in Vegas specifically. Mm-hmm. That did not used to be the case. It used to be that they wanted your, if you were staying at Bellagio, they wanted your action to be at Bellagio. And it would be counted differently if it were at another property. My understanding is that's no longer the case. So much like Caesars, you can play it. I think you can play it any MGM property in Vegas, and it doesn't matter which. Is that, Chris? Do you understand the same thing?
That's what I've heard. I mean, I have a platinum card at MGM, but honestly, I haven't been there in a long time. And when I do go, I typically don't bounce around too much, so it's never really popped up for me. If I usually go there, I'm staying at Bellagio and I'm playing at Bellagio. So, I mean, you're definitely right on Caesars. I know that is the case there as a long-time Caesars guy.
This is really going off of I can't remember if you were there with me, but we passed my host at Bellagio in a corridor once, and we were on our way from Bellagio to Aria, and I kind of was apologetic to him that we were going off property, and he said, "Don't worry, it all counts the same now." So that's really all I'm going off of, is that that kind of throwaway remark. If anybody knows anything different or anything to add, please give us a tweet and we can report back to Tim and with that information. But I think my understanding is at MGM it doesn't matter, just as it doesn't at Caesars.
Awesome. Well, there you go.
And Wynn, since we're Wynn fanboys, at Wynn between Wynn and Encore, it also doesn't matter. Wynn and Encore are the same. They are two different properties, but they're the same as far as your play goes. They are different, interestingly enough, for tips, though. Encore dealers, the tips are separated between Wynn and Encore. So if you're tipping heavily at Wynn and not at Encore, Encore doesn't get the benefit of that, and vice versa. Just a little added nugget of information there.
And I'll go one step further, since I wrote that article today about casino credit and talking about how it's unique to each individual property. Wynn and Encore are one of the very few places where credit is actually shared across both properties. So if you have a Wynn credit line, you can use that at Encore without issue, and vice versa.
I knew that, but I hadn't thought of it. So, I mean,
that's one of the only places
without.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the only places I can think of, period, where that is the case.
Do you happen to know? I don't know if you do, but do you happen to know if Venetian and Palazzo?
I don't have credit.
Yeah.
I haven't been there in a long time, and I don't have credit set up there. If I had to guess, I would say yes. I think it just happens to be those unique properties that are kind of sister properties right next to each other. But it's definitely not the case for any Caesars property, any MGM property, or any other sort of strip property. So
that's kind of what I would think too.
Okay, Josh, touch base real quick on our contest to figure out where that opening clip come from. Do we have a winner?
We do not have a winner. We don't even have anybody that's close yet. I'm thinking about doing a couple different things for hints. Because we kind of put together this episode at the spur of the moment. I didn't have anything ready for tonight. So the contest is still ongoing. And if you want to venture to try and figure out, I think it's going to be hard based on the responses that we've had so far, nearly impossible for anybody to figure out without some more hints. So expect those. I was thinking about doing something. Haven't decided this yet. I haven't talked to Chris about it yet, but I was thinking about doing some sort of progressive jackpot where I add $5.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. You know what, Josh? Let's make it official. It is now $55. If you can figure it out, I am bumping it up. That will come out of my pocket. First person to get it, it's up to $55.
So it's a progressive.
It is. Yeah, I like that.
So if it gets to 1,200, we're gonna have to do W2Gs.
Then we're gonna have to issue a W2G, and as a tax professional, I'm gonna have to figure out how to record all that and make it work.
Anyway, I appreciate the guesses that people have so far. As we're listening to that clip, it's driven me crazy ever since we first played it. There's a couple sounds that are in there, and I thought, what is that? And this little hint, there's actually somebody sitting down on a leather couch or leather chair in the clip that makes the little little like leather noises. But anyway, I kept thinking, did we record it wrong or something like that? But it's actually from the clip itself.
Interesting. Anyway, I'm going to have to go Google ancient craps clips with leather couches and see what comes up.
See what that gets you.
Yeah. See if that gives you an answer. Awesome. And I mentioned it a minute ago, but earlier today I did put out a new article on crapvegas.com about casino credit. We had a ton of questions over the past month or two, all about, how do you establish credit? What are the good reasons to do it? How do I take a marker? How do I pay a marker? I tried to answer all those questions today in the article, and I know Josh and I will probably touch base on it next podcast. But give that page a read. Let me know what you think. Give me some feedback on it. You guys have been absolutely awesome over the past few weeks, giving us all sorts of great feedback on what you like, what we can keep doing. So we really are appreciative. Thank you all for all of that.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have the positive feedback we've had so far. Hope we can keep the episodes coming, not once every 4 days or so, but
I don't know. Let's keep the momentum going, Josh. Let's keep it going.
All right. Tomorrow night, we're going to release episode 3.7.
Yep. It's going to be a 10-minute mini episode. It will be terrific. Okay. So I'm going to be out in Vegas. I've finally got my calendar set since the last time we talked, Josh. I'm going to be out there July 8th through 10th, and then the weekend of July 22nd through 24th as well. I think both of those trips are probably going to be to Wynn. I probably won't be bouncing around too terribly much. I'm trying to play catch up to grab my black card status since somebody rushed ahead and got it. And I'm hoping I don't lose as much money as you did in the process.
Spent my way into it, right.
As far as I know, you won't be there with me, but are you going to try to sneak out there just in case?
It's pretty doubtful that I can make either of the 2 weekends in July happen. I would love to.
What a hater!
I know it's pretty doubtful. I might be able to sneak in a midweek trip somewhere in there. I haven't nailed that down yet. If I did, I would be. I'm toying with the idea of trying to stay at Aria because I've actually never stayed at Aria. So we'll see if that all happens. But for now, nothing on the books for me until the end of August.
Okay. And anything else you want to hit on?
For sure. No, I appreciate everybody listening and hope you enjoyed our little 47-minute episode.
Yeah, this was really short for us. Okay, guys. Thank you all for listening. We'll all talk soon.
Talk to you soon.
Vegas, here we come.
Thanks for listening to the Crap Vegas podcast.
Have you ever been to Vegas?
Check out all our recent news and our Vegas trip calendar by visiting crapvegas.com.
See you in Vegas.